Fill to capacity. Crazy good stories and timely topics. Podcast for people too stubborn to quit and too creative not to make a difference. Inspiring, irreverent, and informative. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Pat Benincasa, and welcome to Fill to Capacity. For today's episode, I have a story to tell. The Geography of Memory, my Southern Italian Terra Firma. I grew up in two worlds. The U.S. of my parents and brother in a typical American neighborhood watching typical American TV families, and my other world existed in an alternate reality of my immigrant relatives. I grew up in two worlds, in an alternate reality of my immigrant relatives. My parents were born in Italy. They were self-employed and worked all hours, day and night. They spoke perfect English without a trace of accent. They read paperbacks and Reader's Digest, and TV highlights included any and all Westerns, specifically High Noon with Gary Cooper. Oh, my brother's name is Gary. At home, we were like other American families, except for the great culinary divide. We ate Italian, and others did not. Italian was never spoken, and we just blended in, except for Saturday mornings. I would get up early to watch cartoons, and then a man in a serious voice would come on and warn all non-citizen residents or aliens to register with the government, and what would happen if they didn't. I panicked, as any 6-year-old would. Was he talking about my aunts and uncles or my grandmothers? I watched and waited for weeks, and I was eventually relieved that no one was taken away. So how American was I? In the 1950s, there was a fear of communist infiltration, which led to government programs like the Security Alien Registration Program that came about to identify potential security risks and foreign agents. I can assure you, my Southern Italian relatives were neither. Now, my parents worked all the time. My brother Gary and I spent a lot of time between two Aunt Marys. Each household was equipped with a non-English-speaking grandmother and was filled with visiting relatives and cousins. We did everything with relatives: birthdays, holidays, graduations, weddings, and visits. Most of them spoke broken English, and they inhabited a world of sing-song language, heavenly food smells, animated conversations, hands-on work, and a very non-American way of being. This was, for me, a reconstituted old country, my emotional terra firma. My Aunt Mary and Uncle Echo and Grandma Raffaella lived on South Boulevard in one of only two houses in downtown Pontiac, surrounded by factories. I didn't notice the industrial urban location until many years later. My aunt and uncle had one house, and across a gravel lot, the second house they rented to a long-term tenant. The South Boulevard house had two huge, lush gardens, flanking the backyard with a small overhead grape arbor. Towards the end of the lot was the chicken coop and a large pen with two chocolate brown boxers. Relatives stopped by day and night. Uncle Echo worked at a factory and at the end of the day, he would sit beneath the grape arbor with other men, each with a shot and a beer, with talk peppered with head-nodding gestures. My Aunt Mary orchestrated all things house, from making homemade pasta and sausages to laundry on the line or holding court in the kitchen when family stopped by. My grandmother Rafaela, born in 1879, was a 4'11" dynamo, a joyful, animated persona moving at warp speed throughout the day. The chicken coop and gardens were her domain. She loved being outdoors and having her hands in the dirt, and I loved to follow her and do the things she did. There was a way that we understood each other. Even though I didn't speak Italian, it didn't matter, because we spoke the language of the heart. Now, TV was still a novelty, but when it arrived at South Boulevard, it quickly had huge repercussions. Everyone marveled at the little screen with images. The next morning, so early, it was still inky dark. Grandma Rafaela was pounding on Aunt Mary and Uncle Echo's bedroom door, telling Mary to get up. Marietta, Marietta, vieni qua! They had to hurry and clean the house. Well, so they did. The next morning, it happened again, and they moved quickly, cleaning everything. Well, on the third day, Aunt Mary had had enough. Confronting her mother, she asked, why did they have to clean the house before sunrise? My grandmother looked at her with pleading agitation and said, because the little people in the box will see that the house isn't clean. Looking back with an emotional distance of many years, I have to say there was something magical about living in two worlds. How is it that the older we get opens a portal to our debris-strewn past, and this portal becomes a willing vantage point of our earliest memories, part casualty clearing station, part daytime comedy, or behavioral blueprint? Maybe all of these. Back to South Boulevard. My mother would drop us off for the day, and when she picked us up, she'd ask, did they behave? Aunt Mary always gave her a full-throated, yes, yes, Edu. However, what she didn't say was how my brother took apart everything that had screws on the cover. As for my reconstituted old country world, I cannot gloss over the glitchy downside, like the belief that girls didn't go to college. They got married. Because both of my parents were the babies of their families, they chose the American notion that girls could go to college. At that time, prevalent thinking said college-educated girls would make better wives. I often felt like I had an intergalactic passport to travel between two very different worlds simultaneously. I don't think I'm alone in feeling this way. Anyone who grew up with immigrant parents or grandparents lived in two worlds. In my case, let me explain. My relatives came from Calabria, a region of high illiteracy and severe poverty. The Calabresi are a determined and at times bullheaded people. They earned their nickname, testa dura, or hardheads. They left their rural village and everything that was dear to them and came to the U.S., to the Detroit area. Like many immigrant children, my mother recollected how she was placed in kindergarten, not understanding the language, but she eventually learned to speak flawless English. My relatives got jobs in factories or started grocery stores or bars or built the sewer system between Pontiac and Detroit. One thing the Calabrese know is hard work. My parents had a business and they wanted to be Americanized in every way. And they wanted that American dream. And my relatives were only themselves, transplanted in this new country, hence two different worlds. Is this not the immigrant dilemma? How much of myself do I give up to blend in? And how do I cherish and preserve my ancestral roots? People who have never had to move to a new country do not have to weigh and measure pieces of their identity to fit in, nor do they have to silence their DNA that says otherwise. To you, my beloved ancestors, in your blood is my knowing.